What's up, guys? Nate Dog FPV here. Today we're going to be fixing the EMAX Baby Hawk R Pro. So if you guys saw my first video about this one, there were some issues that came up. For one, the VTX channel kept resetting itself. Two, the RSSI was wrong and all over the place. Even with the transmitter turned off, there was still an RSSI value bouncing between like 8 and 10 most of the time. So those are the couple of issues that I've seen myself, guys. I've also heard someone else report that the OSD from the camera was actually turned on and they couldn't figure out how to turn it off. So this is actually a Caddx camera. The wiring harness that usually comes with this, has a little split off that goes to the OSD controller that was in the box with this Baby Hawk. But this wiring harness they actually have on here does not have that on there. So it doesn't have a way to connect the Caddx camera controller unless you do like some custom wiring and actually create that wire that you need to go to the camera controller. So luckily, guys, I found a fix for all these issues. Another great thing about that is we don't even have to take it all apart or really do any kind of soldering or anything like that. So it's all going to be firmware related. So I'm going to show you guys how to update the firmware on this thing, put on the settings that should have been on it from the factory, and again, we'll go through all that. I'll show you guys how to set your VTX channel through the OSD. You can also access your camera OSD menu through OSD. So yeah, we're going to go through all that, guys. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy the video. Again, had some problems with this. I've heard of a lot of other people having the same problems. I think the big issue is like the first batch of these that went out was not on the correct version of Betaflight, which was causing problems. But yeah, I'm going to show you guys how to update it in Betaflight and everything. We'll go through that process, and then again I'll show you how to access some of the features on here. And yeah, but hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please subscribe and like, and we'll see you on the next one.
Alright guys, so here we go with the Baby Hawk R Pro Fix. Now the first thing we need to do is check the firmware version on our Baby Hawk. Again, you may not have these same problems if you have one of the later batches, but if you have one of the initial batches, then you could have this problem. So the first thing we're doing, guys, plugging in our USB to the Baby Hawk. We're going to plug the other end of the USB to the computer. Here we are in Betaflight. We see the COM port showed up, so we're going to go ahead and hit connect. Alright guys, so now we're connected in Betaflight. In the upper left corner, we can check our firmware version. So we can see mine is Betaflight 3.3.2, which is the wrong version. EMAX actually intended for Betaflight 3.5 to be on this new Baby Hawk R Pro. So we are going to need to update our firmware, guys, and add in the settings that EMAX intended for this thing to have. So again, you guys should definitely check your version before doing this. Again, if you're already on Betaflight 3.5, then you probably don't need to go through these steps. So the first thing we have to do, guys, to update our firmware is we need to get this guy in bootloader mode. So to do that, we're going to unplug the USB cable from the computer. We're going to leave the cable plugged into the Baby Hawk, and we're going to have to hit the bootloader button, which is actually right next to the USB port on the Baby Hawk. It'll be like right next to a little standoff there as well. The button's actually kind of on the side. So you guys should just be able to stick your finger in there, or a fingernail, and just push that little button in. You might have to use a screwdriver or something if you don't have any nails, but it should be pretty easy to push. Once you get it pushed in, guys, you're just going to go ahead and plug your USB cable back into the computer, and that should get you into bootloader mode. So here we are back in Betaflight, guys. You can see I don't have anything showing up. I don't have a COM port showing up. I don't have DFU showing up. So I'm having the typical driver problem on this particular computer with the Baby Hawk. So we've got it in bootloader mode, but nothing's showing up. So what we're going to have to do to fix that, guys, is use the Impulse RC driver fixer tool, and that will actually get the appropriate drivers for this particular flight controller so we can get it to load up in bootloader mode. So to do this, guys, I just go to Google, search for Impulse RC driver fixer. It's going to be the top one there that says downloads Impulse RC. So I'm just going to go to that page. I'm going to download the very top file, which is the driver fixer tool. Again, we're just going to click on that, guys. You'll see the little download start. Go ahead and hit run on that. You may get a prompt asking to allow changes on the machine or something like that. Just go ahead and click yes there, guys. So here we can see the Impulse RC driver fixer running. We can see it just says installing DFU driver there, so it did see our flight controller. It did find the correct driver for it, so that's great. So now we should be able to get Betaflight to recognize the flight controller in bootloader mode. So we're going to jump back to Betaflight, guys. We can see we still don't have DFU showing up. That's pretty common. After you run the driver fixer tool, you'll likely need to restart the flight, or excuse me, not restart the flight controller, but restart Betaflight. So you can see, guys, there I actually just restarted Betaflight. We do see DFU in the upper right corner now, so that's great. We're in bootloader mode. Now we need to choose our firmware version. On this particular Baby Hawk R Pro, the target is actually going to be a Maytech F405, and then we're just going to choose the appropriate firmware version. Again, we want it to be 3.5, so I think the latest version is 3.5.1, so we're going to select that. We can leave the other settings there as default. There's really no need to change any of that. Once you get your settings picked, guys, you're going to do load firmware online, and then we're going to flash firmware. So it's going to go through a quick process here, guys. Basically, it erases the firmware on there first, and then of course after that it's going to go into the flashing process. This may take a few minutes to complete, guys, depending on your computer. Again, I'm going to kind of fast forward through it here. We're just going to see flashing for a second, then we're just going to jump to the end. So we can see it did finish flashing, finished up that part, so that's great. Now we can see our COM port came back, so we should be able to connect to our flight controller. Now here's another pretty common issue, guys. So when I go to reconnect, Betaflight's just saying waiting for data or loading data, something like that, and it's not actually loading anything. So guys, that can happen from time to time with Betaflight. Really the easy fix here, just restart Betaflight, restart your flight controller, unplug it from the computer, plug it back in, restart Betaflight, and everything should work fine for you. So we can see I just restarted Betaflight, guys. Just plugged the quad back in. Now we can see our COM port shows up. Go ahead and hit connect, and now we're connected in Betaflight. So that's great, guys. So we've got it updated to the correct firmware version that EMAX wanted us to use. But now we also need to get the correct settings that EMAX actually wanted us to use on the Baby Hawk. So to do that, guys, we're going to go to the EMAX-USA website. And then you can just search for Baby Hawk R Pro. You can see I've already got the page pulled up here. You can see the URL in the search bar as well. So what we need to do, guys, is grab the dump file, and we're going to import that dump file in Betaflight. Notice a little technical bulletin on this page as well, where EMAX is actually acknowledging that a bunch of these went out with the incorrect firmware version, and that you need to update the firmware to 3.5 and add their dump file. So they are acknowledging this problem. So the issues I've been having with the VTX and the RSSI not working right and all that stuff, yeah, all that was actually because the firmware version wasn't correct. But EMAX is acknowledging the problem, and they've got it posted on the page there, so you'll know how to fix it. So now, guys, we're going into our CLI dump file. We're going to go ahead and copy everything from this page, and then we're just going to import that into Betaflight. So you can see we've copied all the way to the end. We're going to right-click copy, then we're going to jump back to Betaflight, go to the CLI tab, and we're just going to Control-V on our keyboard to paste that in. And then we're going to push enter, and that's going to start saving all those settings onto the Betaflight. So this is great, guys. This is basically going to get you to the point where EMAX wanted it to be from the factory. So my guess is, they just had this initial production batch. Maybe they were still working on some of the settings or something like that at that point, and unfortunately just a batch went out that didn't have all the correct settings. So that happens from time to time, kind of unfortunate, especially like if a new pilot gets a hold of one of these. But, at least there is a fix for it. And of course, this video is going to walk you through it, guys. So now that the CLI is saved, we're reconnected in Betaflight. We're going to take a look at the settings. So on the ports page, guys, one difference I noticed is that RunCam device is enabled on UART 4. That was not there initially. So if you guys saw my first video, you'd kind of be able to see how the settings were initially when it was on the 3.3.2 version. So they've got RunCam device turned on UART 4. We've got TBS Smart Audio on UART 5. Still got our serial RX on UART 2. So that RunCam device being turned on, guys, is a good thing, because I remember hearing somewhere that this thing was supposed to have camera control already set up for you. And of course, seeing that RunCam device there on UART 4 makes me think that they do have that turned on automatically with the correct settings. So we'll get into that, guys, hopefully. So everything else, guys, on the ports page looks correct. So we're going to be moving on next. We're going to jump to the configuration page. Okay, so here we are on the configuration page, guys. So the first thing I'm going to do, flip on motor direction is reversed. I do run reverse props. I need to turn that on. It looks like they changed the motor idle value from, I think it was 8 or 8.5 initially. So it looks like that's a 7 now. So that's good. If we look at the PID loop and the gyro frequency, we can see that has been updated to 32 and 16, where initially I believe that was 8 and 4. So they didn't even have the 32K sampling turned on the initial way it came. So that's been enabled. I am going to turn on accelerometer also, guys. I do use horizon mode from time to time, so I'm turning that on. Here I'm setting my max arm angle to 180 degrees. And again, I do that, guys, so you can pretty much arm the quad at any angle. Also going to be adding in my call sign here, guys, so that's just ndog. Over on the other side, we can see the RSSI is turned off. So initially when this thing came to me, RSSI was turned on, and I believe that was causing a problem with it not showing up correctly. So that's fixed as well, so they have that switched off in the Betaflight configurator. We've already got S-Bus and everything selected. They've still got the LED strip, air mode, OSD, dynamic filter, and all that turned on, so everything there should be fine, guys. On my beeper, I like to run the top 3 and RX set. So that gives me like critical beeps, and it lets me hit the beeper from a switch. So we're gonna go ahead and save that page, guys. Reconnecting here. Gonna move on to our next page, which is power and battery. All this looks fine, guys. It should be set to onboard ADC. So that's set correctly. There's nothing we need to change there. Moving on to the PID tuning page. It looks like they've turned down the RC rate a bit here, guys. I think initially that was set to 1, and I think it's 0.9 here. So that's good. A lot of times on the Baby Hawks, the rates can be a little bit too high, especially like if you're used to rates on a 5-inch quad, then you switch to a Baby Hawk with the same rates on a 5-inch quad, probably won't work that well on a Baby Hawk. And that's simply because the Baby Hawk's so much smaller that it flips a lot faster. So it looks like they've set that to 0.9 on the RC rate, so that's good. I'm also going to add a little more expo here, guys. They had it set to 0.1 initially. I'm going to change mine to 0.4, and that's just my personal preference on expo. Also going to take a look at the filter settings here, guys. So initially they still had the, I believe it was the D-term notch filter was still turned on with the other 2 turned off. So here we can see all 3 are turned off. So that's what I would, pretty much expect to see with dynamic filtering enabled. So glad to see that's fixed as well now. So all 3 of those are switched off. So now, guys, jump into the receiver tab. We can see RSSI channel is set to aux5. So that's good. A lot of people have been reporting, when they get everything bound up, it looks like aux5 was the RSSI channel, but initially EMAX had it set to aux4. So obviously that CLI dump they gave us does set that to the correct aux5 channel now. I had to switch my other configuration there to FR Sky to get the correct channel mapping. I'm also going to add a little bit of deadband here, guys. And notice the low stick threshold is set to 1050, so we won't have that stupid arming issue where when you get out in the field and try to fly it, it won't arm because the low stick threshold was set at 1000. I know a ton of people have had that issue, and had to post and figure out how to fix that. Again, when I initially got this one, it was still set to 1000, which is kind of aggravating. But again, it looks like in the updated CLI dump they have, it does fix that also. So here, guys, we're going to do the modes page. Pretty straightforward here, guys. This is, of course, the configuration that I like to use. Obviously, your configuration may be different. So you can set this up accordingly, to whatever mode you use and what switches you use and everything like that. I personally put ARM on auxiliary 1. I put my modes on auxiliary 2. So I've got angle, horizon, and acro. Of course, I put my beeper on auxiliary 3. And I put the flip over after crash on auxiliary 4 for turtle mode, because I do a fair amount of racing, guys. A lot of the time I'm flying, I'm doing little races and stuff like that, so I use turtle mode fairly often. So I do like to turn that on also. So real quick, guys, I'm just going back through. I'm going to double check all of my modes, and this is a habit I like to try to get into. So after I go through and initially set them, I look at it again and just verify everything before I save. And again, of course, you don't want any issues with accidentally arming or anything like that, guys. So it's always a good idea to double check your modes, make sure you've got them set correctly. So jumping over to the OSD tab, guys, we can see they've got RSSI turned on, call sign, the flight time, battery voltage, and I believe they have current draw turned on as well. I don't personally really care about current draw or don't pay attention to it, so I'm going to flip that off, guys. Looks like they have the default set to NTSC now, which is good as well. I believe the way it initially came, it was set to PAL, which I believe was wrong for this particular camera that I have on here. So that's automatically set to NTSC. So real quick, guys, I'm going to scroll down, just check the post-flight statistics. Obviously, anything that has to do with GPS or altitude or anything like that does not need to be turned on. Obviously, this Baby Hawk R Pro does not have GPS. It does not have a barometer or anything like that, so there's no need to have the altitude or any of that stuff turned on. So I'm just going to go through here, guys, real quick and flip off those that I'm not interested in, and I'm going to turn on the ones that I do like to see at the end of my flight. So once we get that done, guys, we're going to go ahead and save this page. And we're also going to update our font, guys. To do that, you just click on Font Manager, choose the font you want, and then click Upload Font. Personally, I like to use the Clarity font. I think that's one of the best ones as far as being able to read it and just being able to glance at it, and read it quickly without it being distracting. So again, I've just uploaded the Clarity font there. So I'm going to reconnect, guys, move on to the next tab, which is the LED strip. So they actually do have a custom configuration here, which is cool to see. That's one of the nice features about the new Baby Hawk R Pro is it does have two built-in LEDs. This is the first Baby Hawk that had built-in LEDs, so that's pretty cool. So we can see I've highlighted those two there, and they have it set to arm state, and they have special colors turned on for red and green. So basically, when the quad is not armed, or when it's disarmed, it's going to be green, and when you arm the quad, the lights are going to turn red. So that's pretty cool, guys. I like to see, a custom configuration with LEDs, and it's just awesome that they have the built-in LEDs on this one as well. I'm so glad to see that, guys. So I'm just going to leave it at the default configuration right now with the arm state. So that looks good, guys. That should be pretty much it for the beta flight setup. Just a few settings had to be changed, but it looks like, in their CLI dump, they've got everything pretty much correct now. So now, guys, we're just going to test and verify everything. So we're going to go ahead and flip on our x-lite here. Okay, so we've got our x-lite turned on. Got my little FPV screen here, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and flip that on as well. Then we're going to grab our Baby Hawk and get it plugged in. Notice I've got my XT30 secured to the arm, which I've done that on all my Baby Hawks. If you guys haven't seen my first video on this thing, be sure to check that out, and I'll kind of walk through all the little modifications I did as far as zip tying things and stuff like that. So we've got it plugged in now, guys, so that looks good. So the first thing we're going to do, I just want to check and make sure my modes are working. So I'm just going to flip through the switches and make sure they work. Flip my mode switch, you should hear a beep. At least if you're using my configuration, you should hear a beep each time you flip through your modes. I'm also going to test arming here, guys. We can see when I arm, the lights turn red. When I disarm, the lights go back to green. So again, I'm just verifying those things right now, guys, making sure all that works. So now we're going to test the video portion, guys. I'm actually setting the correct channel on my FPV screen. That way we can test out accessing the VTX functions through the OSD. Also, hopefully be able to access the camera's OSD functions through the regular OSD as well. So again, by them having that run cam device turned on UART4 like we saw in beta flight, that should allow that to work. So I've got my FPV screen set to the correct channel, guys. So I'm actually, I've disconnected the battery. I'm just replugging in the Baby Hawk now. And we just want to make sure we do have video. So we can see I do have video there on my FPV screen. So now the first thing we're going to try, guys, is getting into the VTX menu, or the OSD menu from basically on the flight controller's OSD. So to do that, we're going to go up and to the left on our throttle stick, and we're going to go up on our pitch and roll stick. And that should get you into the OSD menu, which we can see on the FPV screen there. So guys, if you want to change your VTX channel, you're going to go down to Features, then you're going to go into Features. Then we're going to go to VTX SA, which stands for VTX Smart Audio. And guys, I'm going to change mine to Race Band 2, which is the channel I'm mainly using right now. I'm going to set my power to 200. I'm going to go to set, and on confirm, I'm going to choose yes. Okay, when you do that, guys, it should change your VTX channel. Obviously, you can see there I just lost video, so it definitely did something. So I'm going to change my FPV screen to R2 now, and we should get the video back, which confirms that it did actually work correctly and it did switch the VTX channel like it was supposed to. Yep, so that looks good, guys. So now I'm gonna back in the OSD menu still, so I'm just going to exit out of that. All right, so that works, guys. So now the next thing we need to check is if the we can get to the camera's OSD menu as well. So to do that, guys, you're simply going to go up on the throttle stick and you're going to push to the right, and that should get you into the camera's menu. So there on the FPV screen, guys, you can see that I am in the camera's menu now. So that is working correctly, which is great. So this menu is a little bit weird to scroll through, guys. On my right stick, normally you can just move up and down on your right stick, and that seems to work. For me, guys, when I pushed up on the right stick, it kind of scrolled through all the options and then went to the next option down in the little menu. So it seems like it might be a little bit quirky as far as like scrolling through it and everything, which you definitely can get to the settings, guys. If you want to go into one of the options, you just push right on the throttle stick again. So should be able to change pretty much anything from here, like if you want to change your colors or modes or brightness or contrast or stuff like that, guys, you should be able to do all that from here. Honestly, I typically don't mess with any of that. Most of these FPV cameras work great for me just out of the box. I don't really do any nighttime flying or anything like that, unless there's lighting, of course. So, for me, guys, I really don't need to change any of that. But if you're having an issue, or maybe the OSD's or the camera's OSD was also turned on or something, I did hear one person report that. So that would be a way to get into it, guys, and fix it. But yeah, we verified that works, guys. Everything looks good. So that's great, guys. So definitely EMAX's, technical bulletin there was correct. Update the firmware version, add their CLI dump, and everything should be working like it's supposed to. One more thing, guys, too. I also wanted to point out that the RSSI value does work now. So we can see in the OSD my RSSI value is working. If I take my transmitter away, we can see the RSSI value is changing like we would expect it to. So really, yeah, all the issues I was having, guys, is fixed by this updating the firmware and adding that CLI dump. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, so far, very happy with the Baby Hawk R Pro. Kind of aggravating the settings weren't correct out of the box. Hopefully they'll have that fixed, for other people that'll be getting them soon. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Please subscribe and like, leave a comment, and we'll see you guys on the next video.